Hello and welcome to Daily Conspiracy Podcast. We don't take days off because reptilians don't take days off. And today I'm so happy to bring on our guest. I'll say to him in a minute. I've been watching his stuff for a little bit now. But we've got Rob Counts from Metaphysical on with us. And hi Rob. Bring him up, Ollie.
Bring Rob up.
How you
Hey,
doing,
you
mate?
guys. This is a great intro. We don't take days off because reptilians don't take days off. I love it. It's full on.
How you doing?
It's great to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah,
No,
no,
you're
it's good.
most welcome, mate.
It's really cool to have you on. I started watching your stuff back because you were just saying before we start the show that you started Edge of Wonder around about 2018, and I didn't realize it started around about 2018 because that was around about when I started watching. Edge of Wonder. Yeah, started watching Edge of Wonder, and I hate usually when people turn around and say they have good memories of like lockdowns during COVID because it makes me genuinely angry. It's like, all right, you enjoyed that shit, did you? That's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But if I have a single positive memory about it, it's usually sat with my girlfriend who would have been watching some bullshit on the TV where I was sat with my iPad and some headphones on. I'd subscribed to the Edge of Wonders membership thing.
Yeah.
I was binge watching your stuff on Pizzagate and things like that. It got
That's
me
awesome.
through it got me through lockdowns. So thank you for making all that stuff.
That's awesome. That's such a great story. And yeah, no, I hear you. We ended up getting nuked off of YouTube in 2020.
Yeah, I
But
remember.
what's interesting though is that with everything going on politically right now, we decided to reach back out to YouTube and see if we could get the channel back. They actually gave us Edge of Wonder back, so we haven't started
Amazing.
publishing back there. This is like a couple of weeks ago, but we do have it back, and now we're kind of taking a step back and thinking, hey, what do we want to do with this now? You know, there's 490,000 subscribers over there, and it just seems like if we're going to come back, it better be awesome, you know?
Do you get like the old back catalog as well, or is it like
yeah, we got everything back, and shockingly, even the subscribers and everything. But for different reasons, we took some of the content down. Some of it was, you know, when you're deep in the research, especially back in between 2018 and 2020, there was a whole lot that none of us knew. That after 4 or 5 years, we've just become a lot more. I think we've come to a more mature understanding of how things work and where things are, and so some of that content we've taken down because we feel like, you know, just for integrity purposes. But other than that, everything's up there. And some of the stuff that was only up on edgeofwonder.tv, of course, like that stuff was never meant to be on YouTube anyway.
Yeah.
Way too crazy. Like the music industry series was just like,
some of my
dude,
favorites.
like,
yeah.
oh my gosh. I mean, and the craziest part about it is like, we were just taking you guys through what we were going through because we didn't like every time we'd start researching some of this stuff, we would just be like, what? Like, that's how it is? Why is no one talking about this? We have to tell people. And then we would do our best to kind of let everyone know. And then, yeah, and then just ended up being that the morning that the Hunter Biden laptop story broke, they just totally nuked us off of YouTube. And, you know, in hindsight,
that was a coincidence.
Oh, right. No, and there was like maybe like 10 to 15, maybe even 10 to 20 different channels that got nuked that day, but we were one of them. And that was, you know, that was really sad. It caused a lot of turmoil in our lives because we lost everything. That was our funnel. Like that was our whole, the only way we could make ends meet was to have the YouTube channel and then to ask people to support us, to subscribe. And so, you know, then after weeks and weeks of just sitting with it and kind of looking inside about it and stuff, I just decided, I was like, you know, either this is going to be the thing that takes me down as a person, or I'm going to get back up and fight harder than I ever have. And if I can come back, then I'm invincible. Because
Mm.
how do you come back from censorship that's that bad? Right. So to me, it just felt like the best way to just kick the powers that be in the teeth was to not stay down, but to just get up and keep going and keep making content. So I've started Metaphysical. Metaphysical is like a more kind of, I guess you could say, like it's it's how I want to. It's all the research that I've been doing, along with John Vivanco, who's a professional remote viewer. Um, and we try to get down to the bottom of mysteries through research and remote viewing that have just been um, confusing people for a really long time. And some of those, you really think are real, and they're not. And some are they sound too ridiculous to be real, but they're real. I mean, the Montauk Project is a perfect example of that. I've been researching the Montauk Project for the greater part of the last 5 years. And there was always something about it keeping my eyes on it. When I don't know if you guys experience this, but sometimes when I'm watching something or when I'm reading something, there's a difference when you're reading something fictional. There's this like wall that's between you and the content. But when you're reading something that's real, it almost feels like you're bilocating to the place where you'll feel more attached to the content, and you keep going through it and you're like, there's something about this,
100%
right?
agree. I've had exactly the same thing with those mummies that were found in the cave.
Oh
Because
yeah.
Ollie, even at the time, Ollie was saying, "No, mate, this is just they're fakes. This is ridiculous."
I said it
And
was
like,
bullshit.
like
And
You're
now
talking about the
I'm
Nazca
in.
mummies. The
yeah,
Nazca
yeah,
mummies, the
yeah,
the weird ones, the tridactyls, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like from the first day of looking into those things, like, no, there's something here. There's something like something tangible is going to come out here now. We did a show talk about them last night, where I think it's like beyond a reasonable doubt now. Whatever they are, they were a creature.
Yeah. Yeah, one of these weird alien and or hybrid creatures. And yeah, John Vivanco and I did a podcast on that where we had John remote view the alien species, and to determine whether these were in fact real mummies, and two, what were they up to? Like
Mm-hmm.
why were they there and stuff. And I don't remember all of the details off the top of my head, but it was a really interesting episode. I remember that. I remember coming out of that being like, whoa, and yeah, real, actually real. So
Did you meet John through researching the Montauk Project?
no. I met John. So if you like, we've been doing the show for over actually about 3 years now, 3 years to
Right.
the day almost. And John and I have been friends for the last 5 or 6 years. He and I met through my work with Edge of Wonder. We were all of a sudden, Edge of Wonder started getting. That's me and Ben Chastain, who's my co-host for Edge of Wonder. What's up, Ben? If you're watching, and we were getting invited to conferences and stuff, and to headline some conferences and to speak at some of them, and share a presentation about craziest stuff that we found or whatever, right? And John is one of the people that I met at one of these conferences. I think it was back in like 2019 sometime. And we just ended up getting into really deep conversations. And then we found ourselves over and over again at conferences, and the conversations just kept going deeper and deeper. And then of course we were just really good friends, talking on the telephone all the time, sharing information, his experiences with certain things that he had remote viewed, and mine through research and different experiences I've had. And at a certain point, I think it was back in 2022, end of 2022, we were like, why don't we just have a podcast and let people listen to our phone calls? Because they're crazy. We have like the craziest phone calls ever. And so we decided to just create Metaphysical to just start having interesting conversations and let people listen in to what we were talking about. Obviously it's a little bit more formal than that, but that was the basic idea. And then as Metaphysical started to evolve more, you're playing that YouTube game. There needs to be at least some content that's a little bit more highly produced. And we're actually working on some documentaries, and we've got a lot of other ideas that we've got going on that we just simply can't do all at once because there's just not enough time in the day, and there's just not enough money resources right now. Everybody's scrapping to put content together. You guys probably know how that
Yep.
goes. So yeah, that's, John and I met a long time ago, and we've just been great friends since. And we just decided that we wanted people to, listen to our conversations and hopefully, I think just raise the frequency out there more. I know that might even sound kind of hippie-ish a little bit, but like seriously, like I think everyone's so immersed in politics that we forget that the world and the universe around us are amazing. And what I love about Metaphysical is it pulls everyone in, and they start having conversations that have nothing to do with politics, and then everyone's talking.
Yeah.
So you'll have like when we were growing the Metaphysical Instagram and TikTok, which are both fairly large now. Like TikTok is like 220,000, Instagram's like 160,000 followers. On Instagram, we had rappers sharing our stuff, UFC fighters sharing our stuff, guys like Gerard Butler. Who's that? Who's that guy? The British guy who's like he's in the outback all the time trying to survive. What's his name?
Oh, Bear Grylls.
Yeah, he follows our stuff.
Is Bear British? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's British. Yeah, you can, for sure. But then, like we had all that, and then I had as many like right wingers as I did left wingers, and everyone was like fighting in the comments, and I was like, this is a dream right here, because they wouldn't talk about politics, but you get them to talk about something metaphysical, and that's I just think that's great. When you have, maybe you don't agree with someone's worldview, but if that person is searching and they're getting something from the content that you're putting out, that's a win. That's a huge win. Like, I feel like that's the biggest win you could have when you have a language that everyone can speak that just absolves excuse my language, but the bullshit that's going on right now. It's pretty awesome,
See, that I get what you mean about the politics thing as well, because it was at some point, realistically, around the Trump presidency, or the first Trump presidency, conspiracy theory, politics became conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
and it sort of stopped this thing of like you can really see it with all the UFO stuff at the minute now, because they all seem to fucking hate each other. But I used to like enjoy listening to podcasts about conspiracies because I just found it really interesting.
Sure.
I like, and sometimes I'd listen to stuff I believed, sometimes I'd listen to stuff that I thought was bullshit, but it was always really entertaining. And at some point, I think lots of people lost that entertainment factor.
I agree. And this stuff should be entertaining. Actually, one of the reasons why we started Edge of Wonder back in the day is we were looking at all the content that was on YouTube, and it was like BuzzFeed was creating conspiracy theory content, and it was so annoying. It was like listening to two guys who agree with one another that nothing could possibly exist out there and everyone's an idiot for believing in it. I was like, that's it. I'm done. Like, let's create something and actually do a good job and explain to people what's really happening out there, Of course, the thought wasn't that formulated, but that's actually what happened, over time. So yeah, I think it is somewhat of a shame. But at the same time, you've got people, what you can see right now, which is really interesting if you're kind of like really watching the trends right now, is that you've got a lot of people, especially boomers out there, that are waking up to what's been going on with health. So like the amount of content that the older generation is consuming around health is like it's an incredible amount. Like, you wouldn't believe.
My wife.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. She's like health obsessed now.
Yeah. because a lot of people, and I'm sure your wife isn't in the older generation, but like a lot of people are waking up to the fact that we've been screwed with for so long, especially Americans, right? I think the American, because like my mom, for instance, right? She's in her 70s. My mom and dad, they're in their 70s. They knew about Edge of Wonder, and they were kind of following what we were doing, and they thought it was cool, And my dad watches Ancient Aliens all the time, so he was kind of like, anytime I'd bring something up to him, he was like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that," and then he'd know something about it, right? But growing up in the States, there was like the food pyramid, what the FDA tells you, like what the CDC tells you, all of that stuff. Everyone just thought like that was the way to be healthy. You didn't even know that like the stuff that we were getting in grocery stores was trying to kill us, And now they're starting to wake up to all of that, especially after what happened in 2020, and it's shocking for them. So now those trends that are following health, so politics and conspiracy theory, just like you said, Lee, and then it's kind of funneled down into health. And at a certain point over the next, like, I'd say 5 to 10 years, I think we're gonna be seeing an enormous amount of people searching for really broad spiritual content, because all of that's got to lead and funnel somewhere. And I think that the fact that people are starting to talk about remote viewing more, they're starting to talk about paraphysical things, and amazing things that have to do with the human mind. It's only natural that some of the disclosure that we're getting with health is going to leak into some of the paraphysical and metaphysical things that are going on around us. And I think people are going to really be searching for that. And so it's good to be a little bit ahead of that. And kudos to you guys for even having this show and talking about this stuff. People are going to be looking for it, I think.
Yeah, I said a while ago when we started this show that at some point that it's not going to be a priest. At some point, people are going to need a good conspiracy theorist to go to explain to them exactly what's gone on and what's been going on for the last few years.
Yeah, we didn't get taken out on YouTube, but we saw we shadow banning is definitely a thing.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's hard work being a conspiracy theorist on YouTube these days.
Yeah, you have to tread that very carefully. Yeah.
What dragged you in? Like, what was where was it? Because I take you're sort of around the same sort of age as we are, and obviously, X-Files is a big thing. When you're the right age. But what was it that got you into conspiracy theories?
I mean, I'd always been really, really. I think I've always been really interested. Who doesn't like a good conspiracy theory? I mean, that was literally a saying that people in my high school had. Who doesn't like a good conspiracy theory? And then we would tell everyone what we found. At that time, it was the 90s. People were talking about how Marilyn Manson got rid of one of his ribs so that he could, like, whatever.
I think Prince did that as well.
Yeah, probably. Paul from the Wonder Years was Marilyn Manson somehow. I mean, there was this stuff spreading around all the time, and those were all kind of really funny and ridiculous. But, everyone would always be talking about the Illuminati and different things. And I think, at a young age, I would think the way that I read pilled was a little bit different than other people. Like I went through high school and then college. And then when I got into college, I was like really searching spiritually. And when I hit about 19, like things came to a head when I hit about 19. And I just decided, like, the way that my life was going, the alcohol, just all the stuff that I was doing, it was making me sick. I didn't feel good about it. I was like the guy that brought the party together too, every night. Right. So I just cold turkey stopped and just started meditating a lot. And it was like the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Like watching all of your friends kind of turn on you, that you've decided that you're going to go down this path, realizing that life is a lot different and harder than you think. And then, I think I was battling depression at the time because of all of the stuff that was going on. And then having the depression be the thing that you're actually fighting for like 1 or 2 years, and then realizing that that stuff isn't you, and that you can actually overcome it, was probably the biggest thing that ever happened in my life. And so I think there's a lot of BS out there about ADHD and depression and all of this stuff, but when you actually take things into your own hands and you fight for your life, you can come out of the other side of that. Like, you can. And I think having that experience at a really young age and getting rid of like alcohol and all of this stuff that was kind of like weighing me down, that was great. I think it was great. And I feel like it set me up to work really hard in my 20s. I did a lot of volunteer work, for human rights stuff that was going on in China. Like there's I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it, but because of your show, you probably have, like the persecution of Falun Gong in China.
Yeah.
There's like in 1999, there was like 100 million people practicing Falun Dafa, and overnight they just all started getting persecuted, tortured to death. Like the craziest persecution of our age, bar none. It's like absolutely the most hidden, incredibly ridiculous persecution probably ever. I mean, we're talking about them harvesting these people's organs, these practitioners' organs, and then selling them, right? Torturing families, like all of that stuff. I was doing a lot of human rights work in my 20s and in my 30s to try to bring awareness to that. And it was just a really interesting time in my life. And I think ultimately, like, I went to art school. I was a graphic designer, photographer, and then I eventually kind of became a creative director. I moved to New York City, was helping some media companies, I won't name here. And I met Ben, my co-host for Edge of Wonder there, and he was going to start a show. And I was just going to help with the branding and the creative stuff. And then I watched the show and I was like, dude, you should probably just let me sit next to you and like, let's see how this goes. And he was like, yeah, come on, let's do it. And then we did it. And at the end of that first episode, we looked at one another and we were like, let's just keep doing it this way. And then it just turned into Edge of Wonder. So getting into this stuff was just like a very kind of organic thing. I was like, as a brand guy, like as a creative director, when you're doing branding, like you'll have documents of research that leads you to a conclusion of why you should design something a certain way for your target audience. It was all research. Laterally translating that kind of research, that very deep research on how people think and what they do. And it was kind of very natural to then just take those skills and start using them to try to figure out the mysteries of the universe in a way that I think other people are afraid to look at, because I'm not coming into this as an atheist and I don't believe. I'm coming into this as like, I want to give whatever it is a shot. And if it's not real, then it's not real. If it is, then let's talk about it, because there's metaphysical stuff out there. I know, I've experienced it. So why shouldn't other people benefit from that? Why does our empirical sciences have to just drain all of the most amazing things about life out of our lives? Like, we should have that back in our life, and we should be able to talk about it without being ridiculed. People have crazy experiences. They have crazy dreams every night. They have near-death experiences. They have out-of-body experiences. They have things that have happened to them that they can't explain, and they can't talk about it because they're going to get ridiculed. That's dumb. That's just the dumbest thing. Like, why? Like, that's actually the stuff we should be talking about, because that's the stuff that, is valuable.
Makes you wonder when that became an issue, doesn't it? When did talking become like such a social faux pas about things like this?
It's that's actually obviously any answer to that question would be a complicated one. But if you look at how the CIA was set up, and the reason that it got set up, you go straight into Roswell and the UFO crash, and how they had to come up with ways of making people look ridiculous who were talking about spectacular things that they had seen in the sky, right? So then you've got that mixed with the entire movement of communism, which is an ideology that is trying to sell everyone on atheism, and people don't really know the history of that. The history of that is so important because it brings us to how things got to where we are. If it wasn't for communism, Darwinism and the theory of evolution would never be a thing. It was Karl Marx pushing Darwin because he found in Darwin's theory of evolution that humans could have come from apes, which is actually ridiculous. Like totally literally no evidence of that, you know? And then you've got now
come from dolphins.
Look, like there could be a developmental thing that happens with human beings, sure, but that's different than the theory of evolution. You know what I mean? And so Darwin never even would have been a thing. Darwin himself was very he was kind of skittish. He didn't even think his theory was that right. But then when everyone started pushing it and agreeing with it, he was like, oh, maybe I am smart, you know? So, you know, I think that it's a shame that we've gotten there, but science is like 100% the reason for that. And I don't hate science, but I hate the extreme version of science, like the religion of science that we have today. And it is religion. It is a religion. It's set up like a religion. The way that they organize themselves is very similar to a religion. You know, they pass money around in a very similar way. It's a belief system at the end of the day. And we're all being asked to brainwash ourselves and indoctrinate ourselves with it. And it's just one data point. It's just one vector. It's not the tell-all. You know, it's great, but obviously there's other ways.
Maybe a few thousand years ago, we were trying to work out how to get through a portal in another dimension, and then all of a sudden we're on Earth.
Could be why we have a Ramamuru. That's for sure. That weird doorway down there in Central America.
Yeah, the doorway that goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of the bottomless pit thing?
No.
I'm thinking of Bob's.
You're thinking of Mel's hole.
Mel's hole, yeah.
Yeah. We so Arama. Am I saying that right? Aramamuru? I think I am. Aramamuru is like these massive megalithic rocks that have all been organized in a row, and there's this little doorway that's like at the bottom, and no one understands like how it was made, what the purpose of the doorway was, because it's like it looks. I think if my memory serves me correctly, it's blocked off. And I think John,
I think there's an indent into it, isn't there? There's like a doorway, and then
it's an indent.
Yeah,
correct. I think John and his team remote viewed that, and they found that it was being used for, like, it was a Stargate. They were using it for that with some technology that we don't understand.
It's like those, you spoke about those stairs, Lee, on the podcast before, those stairs that just lead to nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Randomly in forests.
That might have been an Edge of Wonder thing that I got that from originally.
We had a metaphysical episode that was about the stairways leading to nowhere, and like Yellowstone National Park and stuff.
Yeah,
it's like a lot of stories of that. Like if you see a staircase, while, like, you know, we're talking about park rangers, they're going around and seeing things all the time that they can't talk about, but these stories will leak where they see a random staircase, and if they see one, they're told to just like get in their vehicle and scram as fast as possible. Who knows?
Does anybody know what happens if you stick around?
I can't cannot remember the result of that podcast, but I know we looked into it and it was crazier than you'd think. Yeah, all this stuff is like, we did a whole series on Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta has to be one of the weirdest places on the entire planet. I'm talking about the surrounding area. Every single type of paranormal type of experience you could have exists in the Mount Shasta area. So weird.
So, Rob, is the Demogorgon? Is that how you
The
say it,
Demogorgon?
Demogorgon? Is it real?
I mean, to the best of our knowledge, yeah. Like, in order to explain that, I might go back a little bit into the Montauk Project, if that's okay
Please.
with you guys.
Yeah, I've just gone
Okay.
balls deep there, haven't I? Just
Yeah, that's all. It's all good. I mean,
I
that's
got
the most.
excited.
But it's like,
I've just been watching the episode.
yeah, it's the most. Like, I mean, think about that. That's like, if that's true, that's spectacular, right? That's amazing. That's It's actually unbelievable. So, as I was researching the Montauk Project over the last 5 years, because there were things that were going on in Stranger Things that I just kept looking at, and I was like, these guys know too much. The Duffer Brothers, like, what we were talking about earlier, when you're watching something and it feels different than other content, or
Yeah.
you feel closer to it. Like Stranger Things was one of those types of things, and one of those types of shows. I got that feeling during Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Really weird vibes off of that. Certain like movies like The Dunwich Horror, which was an occult movie. There's just a lot of movies out there where it's like, dude, somebody gave this guy a script, or someone gave them information they shouldn't have had. So with the Montauk Project, I just kept noticing stuff that the Duffer Brothers were doing that was for me a little too much for just a normal amount of research in a fictional program. Like they were mirroring what was going on in the book in different ways, and then hiding things in their like, there were Easter eggs everywhere. That Easter eggs that people would not know about unless you told them, right? And so as that was going on, I was like, season 5 is coming out. I was like, if I'm going to do a series on the Montauk Project, it needs to be now. So I kind of, over a couple of months period, I just started putting together everything, right? So I just went through, again, all of the interviews with Preston Nichols, who's the whistleblower for the Montauk Project. And then I started creating content out of it to explain the story of what happened, right? Because the Montauk Project was an accumulation of every single other project that the US government had done up to that point, and they merged them all into one and created a bunch of new technology, right? So we're talking about like around 1970, 1972. They end up starting this whole thing. And previous to that, the stuff that they had researched in the government, like there was the Philadelphia experiment that happened, which was called Project Rainbow. They were studying weather manipulation. Project Paperclip happened. There was a bunch of new scientists over here during that time. Tesla and Wilhelm Reich had been around, and they had gotten a lot of research from those guys. Then you've got MK Ultra that happened in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And MK Ultra evolved outside of what they're showing us. I mean, clearly, if what's going on in the Montauk Project is true, then absolutely it evolved into something that's much more similar to those weird flashlights they have in Men in Black. I'm not saying they use those, but that they're actually able to do that and replace memories and stuff like that, right? So all of these different things, even including the Manhattan Project, with Wilhelm Reich, you've got his study of orgone and dead orgone, which was how he was manipulating weather, and how he was, like, according to him, curing people of cancer, because cancer would be dead orgone in the body, and he would shoot orgone into people and clear ailments out, according to him. And now we have people making organite all the time, right? Organite, and that phrase organite came originally from Wilhelm Reich, who had created the concept for orgone and dead orgone. Now, at this point, in around the 1970s, they were looking to take their research further on how frequencies could affect the human mind and the outside environment. So they found the strongest frequency emitter that they could at the time that was a part of the military, and it was an old SAGE radar. that was on the tip of Montauk Point in Long Island, New York. The SAGE radar was this massive dish that, could alert us of enemy ships in World War II ahead of time. It might give us like 2 hours notice. Well, this was defunct, and Camp Hero was allegedly defunct for a very long time. No one was there, right? Preston Nichols, the guy, the whistleblower for the Montauk Project, he was working for a defense contractor in Long Island, New York. Lots of defense contractors out there. Defense contractors would be people that are creating technologies for the U.S. government for defense, essentially, for war. So he's working for a defense contractor. He's a radio frequency engineer, and he gets his degree in electromagnetic engineering while he's there. And on his own time, because he's just a super dork, he's doing all kinds of experiments on his own. And he ends up getting a grant to do experiments with psychics so that he can, in his mind, he wants to disprove the theory that ESP is real, that telepathy exists. He wants to disprove it. So he has some psychics that he's working with, and he's finding it impossible to disprove, which is very uncomfortable for him. And as he's doing these experiments, he starts finding that there's this certain time a day where the psychics that he's working with, they just have nothing's coming in. Their brain waves are changing, all kinds of things are changing, and he can't understand it. And he's like, he's a radio frequency engineer, so he's like, there's got to be some type of mission around here that's actually interfering with these guys' brains, right? So he kind of puts together some of his technology, and he goes outside and he starts trying to find with one of his dishes where the frequency is coming from. It's not enough on the ground, so he goes on the roof and he's looking for it, and he puts it in a certain area, and he realizes that it's coming from the Montauk Point area. And so maybe a couple weeks later, he ends up driving down there, and he knows that it must be the SAGE radar. I mean, obviously, if you're living in Montauk, you're aware of that thing, right? But what's weird is everyone knows that this place, there's no one there, that it's been abandoned for the longest time. So he actually pulls up onto Camp Hero. He tries to get in, and he gets stopped by a guard, and the guard is like, "You can't get in here." And he's like, "Well, what's going on? I thought that this place wasn't, there was no one here." He said, "Actually, no, like there's a project being run by the FAA right now, which is the Federal Aviation Agency or whatever.
Yeah.
Association, whatever." So he's like, that's strange, but it's kind of like cold. It stops cold there, right? And so he goes back home, kind of sad, probably, still doing his weird experiments. I don't know if it was like a couple years later or something. And now I'm going to tell this story in a way that doesn't actually coincide with exactly the timeline that he's given in his book. So just be aware of that, right? I might get some of these like small details wrong, but you can always refer to the episodes on Metaphysical if you want like the exact breakdown, because those actually have it all. We've triple checked that to make sure that was all accurate. So he's, one night he's at home working in his lab, because in his house, he has a lab in the back of his house. Some guy comes in. You know what actually happened first is the Air Force Base, the Camp Hero Air Force Base, actually did become abandoned a few years later. And so one of his friends told him, knowing his interest in it, and he goes to the Air Force Base, and he goes through the gate, and he sees stuff everywhere. He sees radio equipment everywhere. He sees, stuff that he actually would like to get his hands on, and as he's walking through and trying to find this stuff, he bumps into a homeless guy, and the homeless guy is talking to him, and he's like, "Hey, what happened here?" And he's like, the homeless guy is like, "Well, don't you know? Like, I recognize you. You used to work here." And And he's like, what are you talking about? Right. So Preston's just like, okay, crazy homeless guy. And then he like leaves and he goes and tries to find, he tries to get like a permit to go on there and buy some of the radio equipment or just take it, which he ends up doing. So he goes back home. This is like a couple weeks later. He's in the back of his house at his lab, as I just said before. And some guy walks into the back of his house, into his lab, knows him by name and starts talking to him about the Montauk Project. And he's like, who are you? What are you doing here? Get out of my house. Crazy, weird guy, right? This is not the same homeless guy. This is like some other dude. And he like pressed it. So now there's 2 points where people said that they recognized him, and he does not know who these people are. Like, he can account for the times that these people are telling him that he was doing something, but he's finding it stranger and stranger that this kind of thing would be going on, right? So he's like, well, look, you know, he kind of takes a step back and he's like, this has to have something to do with the defense contractor that I work for. He just had a hunch, right? So he starts snooping around at work in places that he shouldn't snoop around in. And he ends up finding, like, he's looking for the most highly guarded areas of the base, and he's trying to snoop around to see what's going on, right? So, and you know, this defense contractor has multiple different offices or sites in the Long Island area. So he finds one room and they won't let him in. And then a few weeks later, this room, it gets totally cleared out, and whatever the operation that was being done in there, they move it somewhere else. So he kind of goes into this area and he's snooping around and he sees this like elevator in the back. And he goes in, and now it's one of these like shafts, these old school elevators from the 60s where it's like scary to be in, right? And he looks down and it goes down into the ground to a point where I think he can't even see. It's just, so whatever they were using this for, there was something going on deep underground, right? So he leaves, and then maybe like a week or two later or something like that, or it could have been even spread over a year. I don't even know how long the distance is here, right? But he decides, like, you know, I've got to really use my gut here to figure out more about what's going on. So he decides to go to one of the most hard to get into, highly guarded areas that this defense contractor has. And his idea was that if he was really involved and there was people that knew him, he would be able to get into one of these places, right? And if not, what are you going to lose? They're just going to stop you at the gate, right? Mm-hmm. So he ends up going to one of these highly classified areas, and he just tries to walk in like he owns the place. And the guy at the gate is like, hey, you know, you can't be in here. And he's like, hey, I forgot my pass. Can you just help me out? I've got to go in. And the guy's like, okay. And he actually writes him a pass and gives him a pass to go in, showing that he's been there before and that this guy has seen him before, and he has enough clout to actually have something like that done. So he goes into this base and he starts looking around and trying to figure out, does any of this feel familiar? Right? He goes into one area that feels like more familiar, and it's an office area. And he's looking around, and then he gets into an area with a desk, and he looks down on the desk, and he looks at the nameplate on the desk, and it says Preston B. Nichols, Assistant Director. And so he's like, holy, you know what? And he, you know, basically scrams out of there. He goes back to work and tries to pretend like nothing happened. The next day or so, his direct manager came up to him and was like, don't ever effing go to that place again, and don't talk about anything that you saw. Right? It was a little bit more of a threat, I think, than even I just was able to communicate. So he's finding that he's a part of something that he can't explain, and now he's starting to talk more about it, and he's finding people that have also had strange experiences, because as he's talking more publicly, more people are coming forward, right? So he ends up finding several other people who have similar experiences, and they start, as I said, talking more publicly until they release a lot more information about everything that they knew that they found about the Montauk Project leading up to that point, right? Now, that was Preston Nichols' experience, just of kind of like his confusion around this and how he got interested in researching this, right? But what actually happened in the project is way crazier. So on Montauk Point, where the SAGE radar is, there's a building inside, right? Mm-hmm. And what they did was they wanted to experiment with frequencies, and so they hooked up basically a chair to the SAGE radar, and on the chair would be a human being with electrodes on, and they would emit brain frequency through the radar. The frequency was said to be around 430 megahertz, which is allegedly one of these frequencies between 400 and 450 that can really affect the human mind. And according to Preston, and the entire process is that this chair was one of the most essential things in getting this whole thing started, that the technology was from somewhere else, that maybe some other project that they had done. But he alluded to that the technologies within the chair were actually alien in nature, some of the technology.
Wow.
That it had been passed down from the Syrian race of aliens. That sounds crazy, I know, but that's what's in the book.
We talked about Sirius last night.
Yeah. So he, the chair. Now, the chair he also mentioned looks very similar to the chair in Total Recall, in the 1980s movie of Total Recall, where Arnold's sitting back in that chair. Looks very similar to that, he said. And he actually, what's weird is if you were to combine a few different movies, Total Recall being one of them, you'd probably have a bigger picture of the Montauk Project, because one of the weirdest stories in the Montauk Project book is about them. It's about Mars, and I'll get into that in a minute. So they start setting up this technology around the chair with the psychic in the chair, and they start doing experiments. People in the townspeople are starting to experience all kinds of weird things, like birds all flying around and entering into places they shouldn't be, animals running into town squares, storms that just show up out of nowhere all of a sudden. It's like a terrible storm, and it was totally perfect 10 minutes before. Children walking into the middle of the town square with basically blank faces, and then all of a sudden realizing where they are and then walking away. Crime increasing during this 2-hour period when the frequency emitter was on. Even like the town sheriff or whatever it was that was over there was very confused about why it was during this 2-hour period. And it was just when the frequency emitter was on. So there's all kinds of weird stuff that were going on in Montauk at the time when they start experimenting with this, right? And it took them a really long time to set all of this technology up. I mean, we're talking about it failing and them working to get it back up and running multiple times, right? But this fantastic stuff I'm telling you is the result of all of that hard work of getting it together. Like, they had to move the chair at one point off of the site to get it to work because the frequency from the radar was interfering with the psychic in the chair. And so they had to make sure that they got it off site enough so that they could still use the frequency emitter. And they had to create all of this technology to create a bottle effect around the psychic in order to kind of guard him from the frequency. The psychic's name, what was his name? It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me at some point. He's passed away recently. Anyway, so back to kind of the technology. As they were doing these experiments and experimenting with, the frequency emitter and what it could do to the human mind, they kind of started to go deeper into this, where, can you control a human being with a frequency emitter, like one individual? You know, how far away can you still control someone from the frequency, from the Sage radar, right?
Can we MK Ultra them?
Kind of, yes, exactly, right? And they started doing these bizarre other experiments as well. Like, for instance, it's described that Cameron, what's his last name? Duncan Cameron was his name. Duncan Cameron was the psychic's name. One day they asked him to sit down and they give him hair. And they're like, hold this and tell and show us what you are seeing. Now, what's so weird about this is that the technology that they were creating at Montauk, it wasn't just about the chair and the frequency emitter. They were trying to understand the brain waves from the psychic that it would take to replicate those experiments, where you wouldn't necessarily need a human. So they had supercomputers in there, and they had him hooked up like Professor X to this thing in the chair, and then it's emitting through the frequency. But I mean, it's emitting through the radar. But what they were doing is, over time, they were working out how to actually visualize the stuff that was in his brain on television, so that the technicians in the lab could actually see what he was thinking and what was going on in his head on screen as they were monitoring him. So they had actually worked that technology out, right? So they were like, hey, they give him some human hair, and they're like, I want you to look through this person's eyes and show us what you see. So he actually goes into, he does his thing. He uses the radar. He finds and locates the person using the hair, and he's showing them on screen what this person is doing. So that wasn't enough. Then they wanted to see if they could have him control the person using the frequency, the Sage radar. And you holding the hair and using the technology, he was actually able to control this person's body, right?
Sorry,
Now,
Rob, are they seeing? Are these?
yes,
Are they seeing this on the screen as well? What
yes,
this person is doing? Wow.
yeah. So the technology had advanced to that extent back in the late 70s, early 80s. Which, I mean, think about it. If all of this is real, what do we have now? Yeah. Right? I mean, that's incredible. So they kept experimenting, and what they found is that Duncan Cameron started to be able to use the energy from the frequency to materialize objects on the base. So if he focused on like an apple, he could materialize the apple somewhere on the base, wherever he had imagined it to be. And they kind of, over time, they developed this entire, it's not like he just was able to do it. Like, they had to develop this over time. All of these things take development, but he was materializing things more and more, until one day they are asking him to materialize stuff, and they're experimenting with it, and the object stopped showing up. And they're like, oh, there's got to be something wrong with the chair. Let's have our technicians go and look at it. Everything looks fine. They're confused about it. But they start finding that hours after he kind of gave the prompt, the mental prompt to materialize the object, that it's showing up hours later. And now what is so interesting is they didn't view that as a glitch. They knew that that was a time anomaly. That if they dug into this, that there was something going on with time revolved around the radar and the psychic, that if they could understand it better, they might be able to manipulate time. So they really just scrapped everything and just started working on this problem for I think it was like for a couple of years. And they started finding that Duncan Cameron in the chair could actually begin to open up wormholes using mind intention to travel to other places and or times. So it was at around this point that just sounds so crazy. Even telling it, I'm just like, this is so unbelievable. It's so
I'm in.
I know it's like, it's an amazing story, but then at the same time, it's like, how could all of this actually have happened, right? So he goes into this one part of the story where he's like, oh yeah, you know, have you ever heard of Alternative 3, the book where they talk about if there was a cataclysm on Earth, what human beings could do, and one of them was like have a colony on Mars, right? Well, he's like, yeah, well, actually, that's true. We have a colony on Mars. And you're like, okay, Preston, you know, he's like, yeah, we have a colony on Mars. And they were desperately trying to get into the Cydonia area of Mars to find the technology that was underneath the tunnel system. And I'm like, whoa, what? Right. And he's like, the colony couldn't get into it. And the administrators of the Montauk Project knew about, they were in touch with the administrators of that project, whatever it was. And they asked us to use the technology at Montauk to open up a wormhole, get into the underground area of Cydonia and retrieve the technology for us. And so there was this entire mission to go into the Cydonia area of Mars. And how they did it was they used Duncan Cameron. He opened up a wormhole and they kept moving the wormhole until it opened up into a tunnel system. And then they were able to offload everyone. Now, the dangers of this, and this is where it gets kind of interesting, is if at any point while Duncan is tossing this wormhole, the wormhole collapses, the people on the other side are toast. They're lost forever. You know? I mean, if it's Mars,
if halfway through.
Or if you're halfway through, who knows where you are. You're like probably going to end up on that planet Thor did in Thor Ragnarok, right? Something like that. So he so that, you know, they've got this wormhole open, and they end up achieving the task and finding the technology, but they started to experiment more now with not just places that you could go, but also time. They were going back in time, they were going forward in time, and they found that adult humans have a really hard time with time travel. It's too jarring. Maybe even it's a chemical thing, not just like it's because our brains are mature. But they found that younger children were much more flexible and could bounce back much faster from these missions. And so they were experimenting an enormous amount on children. And of course, they were experimenting on people that no one would miss if they disappeared, like homeless people and stuff. So the first people that went through were usually, like, as Preston called them, winos, like these people who were, you know, drinking too much. No one would miss them. And then they started realizing that the children were actually better at this. And they started, you know, having missions with these children. It was at around this point where there was a lot more unrest on the base, because people started seeing that, hey, you're kind of sacrificing these people. Like, these missions all the time would fail and someone would get lost in time. Preston said that there was something like at least 10,000 people that had gotten lost in time, that the wormhole collapsed either due to the technology or due to the psychic not being able to focus for long enough, or because the people would go through the wormhole. They would know where the wormhole is and they would start exploring and then forget how to get back.
Jeez.
Hours would pass and then it would be gone by the time that they needed to come back. So the people on the base, like Preston, who were not like top tier management, but were kind of higher up, started to feel really awful about all of this. They didn't like it. They were talking more about it. They felt like they wanted to shut the project down. And at a certain point, I think when they had collected enough data and the technology had gotten pushed as far as it could go, I think the head of the project gave the order, one of the scientists gave the order to turn the SAGE radar on indefinitely and just leave it on. So for 7 days straight, they turned the SAGE radar on, and it was just pumping this frequency, right? And I think at a certain point, what Preston claims, and then I think what I found is a little bit different, but what Preston claims is that this went on for days and days and days until finally Preston and some of the others who felt like this should get shut down decided to kind of have a little coup on base. And he and Duncan Cameron were friends, and he gave a signal to Duncan Cameron, and it was basically said that Duncan Cameron let out a beast. He opened up a portal and materialized a beast on base that just started terrorizing everyone, and it cleared the base out within like an hour probably. And that's why there was like stuff strewn around everywhere. Everyone left in a hurry. Now, all of that sounds incredible, amazing, but did it really happen? Because that's the thing, is like there's so many buttheads on YouTube that are like, this didn't happen. Preston is the most not believable guy on the planet. How could you even listen to a guy like that? You know, and indeed, if you watch interviews of Preston Nichols, he is an egghead. Like, he is just a massive geek with probably slight autism or something like that. And so socially, he's really awkward. You know, like he'll be in an interview and he's just got his arms up and he's like talking like that. He slurs his words.
That in one of your videos, and that's that he looks like he's just like telling a story.
Yeah, he's kind of in the zone telling the story, but he might not on the surface. He doesn't always act using social norms, I guess you could say. Like, one of the funniest things that happened on the podcast, and I don't know if you saw this episode yet, but I hadn't even seen this yet, but John found a really old interview with Preston Nichols where it's an audio interview.
I know. I did see that.
And he's he takes a dump while he's getting interviewed, and you can just like hear the entire thing. Like, this is like, but see, like,
he did say, I am 60, you know, this is what 60-year-olds do or something, didn't he?
But also, how do we expect someone that's been barbecued to act?
Correct. But see, this is the thing that the academics will not recognize what you just said. So we have all these people who think that they're smart, and then they'll throw all of these theories out there on why something couldn't be true. But actually, like, yeah, these people's brains were fried, and most of the people that work on these are like socially abnormal, and they like it that way, because the more socially abnormal someone is, the easier it is to discount the entire project when they come forward and whistleblow. Right.
Yeah.
So, but if you listen to him talk about the technology and how it worked, it's like, this guy's on a different level. He's super smart guy. Right.
Do we know if the beast went back in the portal?
Yeah. So this is kind of what we wanted to determine, right? And we had John and his team remote view the entire situation from a few different angles. One was what happened leading up to this? Why did it happen? And then what was the state of Preston Nichols' mind during all of this? Because if Preston Nichols is lying, if he's just doing this for clout, then that would be a really important data point as to whether or not any of this is true, right? So the first thing we looked at was, well, what happened on Montauk? And what John and his team saw, and the story is much more fantastic in the episodes if you go check them out, but what they saw was that scientists were just working on this with an enormous amount of hubris and just were experimenting because they could. There was no remorse and or afterthought of what might happen in this process. And that the frequency emitter being left on ended up opening up and merging another dimension with ours. And it released this beast onto Montauk that basically destroyed everything And that's not even the weirdest part. Because as if it couldn't get weirder. And the way John tells this story is wild, because John and his team were asked to remote view this by an individual that he could not name, maybe 15 years ago, who wanted information as to whether or not a certain thing that happened, whether it happened or not. That was all he got. And then he got a case number and they asked him to check it out. And in his remote viewing data, this is like 15 years ago or whatever it was, he saw all of this stuff that I'm explaining to you, and this weird interdimensional creature that had come through, whose face opened up like a flower, and it had the same vibes as what was going on in Stranger Things.
Shit.
So again, it's like, I feel like a lot of stuff that's going on in Hollywood, I think they're getting directed on some of these minor details that
we've said that forever on this podcast.
Yeah,
I think it's worth noting as well. Wasn't the original working title for Stranger Things was Montauk as well? Wasn't it?
It was. It was called, the original title was to be called Montauk, and it was the Netflix board that wanted it to be called Stranger Things and moved it somewhere else. I think they wanted to stay away from too much heat.
I thought it was interesting as well, for like no big spoilers for anyone that hasn't watched the last episode yet, but the part where Harper says he's going to move jobs and his new job is in Montauk, I thought that was like, wow, okay.
That's like definitely the sequel. It's got to be, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Season 6, new series.
Well, apparently there's going to be a shadow dropped episode today, isn't there?
I'm sorry, but anyone that's been bought into that whole what are they calling it? There's like there's a name for it.
Yeah, I forgot.
Like the Stranger Things something theory.
I literally found out about this 3 minutes before I came on to do this. I was like, oh, what's going on here? I watched a few TikToks about it. I'd love it if it was true. Seems great.
Oh, we'd all love it if it was true, but the fact the problem with that whole theory is that there was actually a lot of good research that was done. Like, there were people that had like legal backgrounds that were looking at the labels of how they labeled things on Netflix, and how they didn't label things the same. They label it always the same way for every single series, but there was an anomaly in this one, and it looked like there was going to be another episode. And then the fact when you typed in fake episode, there would be like the poster for Stranger Things up that said new episode. And I think that, that's all interesting and good, right? But we're talking about how much extra money Netflix would have had to dole out for this other secret episode. And how much work went into all of that. They were editing that last episode up in like a week or two up until it published.
Yeah,
like they were.
It would be if there is an extra episode, because even down to what I was watching before is because I know that I must admit I thought it was really weird when they did a Stranger Things themed Monday Night Raw.
Yeah,
after the series had ended.
Yeah.
And there was people in the crowd with like "Wake Up, Michael" signs.
Yes,
in the crowd. That's pretty cool.
I think that is really cool, but I think that they ended it the way that they did, with all of the things left open for you to translate for yourself what happened. That way they could start another season at some point, 7 years, 10 years down the line, whatever it is, right?
When I was listening to one of your episodes today, Rob, I immediately thought, you know what, I'm gonna listen to Kate. Is it Kate Bush? Kate Bush?
Yeah, Kate Bush.
Listen to the song, and then I wanted to listen just to see if anything happened in the video. I thought, is there any Easter eggs in the video of anything going on? I like to look at stuff that's way back to see if there's anything there.
Sure.
But then I looked at the other song that you mentioned, Cloud Breakers.
Cloud Busting.
Cloudbusters. I watched the music video to that, and the what's his name? The actor. What is he called
Kiefer
now?
Sutherland.
Kiefer Sutherland.
No,
Yeah,
no,
he's
wait.
got
No, it was Donald. Sorry, it was
Donald
Donald
Sutherland. Yeah,
Sutherland.
his father. He's
Yeah, his
got the
father.
book in his pocket from the guy that you mentioned, with the technology,
Yeah.
to do this cloud weather manipulation.
Yes.
It's mad.
I know.
How far does
Like,
this go? They've
but
been
think
telling
about
us
it.
this all along.
I know. And the Duffer Brothers, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, that's too much. Like, the fact that it wasn't just for that song that they decided it had to be Kate Bush. Kate Bush has a few different songs where you're just like, this chick knows way more than she is letting on. And they purposely decided to use her as an Easter egg for other things that you could research. Like, that's just, I mean, that's brilliant, but that's also like, that's so much. It's too much. Like,
yeah, it's the type of thing that makes you go like, hang on, like how much of what around me is bullshit? You know,
yeah, right.
Because I agree. We agree with the music thing. There's certain albums like Hesitation Marks by Nine Inch Nails. You listen to that album, and I always think that album's the closest thing to like horror music. It gives you such an off feeling when you listen to that, especially with headphones on. And it's I don't know. There's something else there that's behind this stuff. Maybe it's a mockery. Maybe it's something to manipulate us in some way. But I think we all know that the entertainment industry is not just there to entertain us.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think just to kind of wrap that up, this thing that John and his team saw looked very similar to the Demogorgon in Stranger Things. And that the way John described it is that, and his team, is that these dimensional spaces merged, and you don't just undo that. I don't know what kind of damage it caused, but years later, a really strange beast washed up on the shore of Montauk.
Yes.
Like, you can find that article, I think it was 2016 or something like that. This really bizarre looking leathery thing, like a
gargoyle thing.
Yeah. It just washed up on shore, and if you talk, I've done a lot of different content on Montauk, and I think the TikTok content was really interesting when I was putting it up, because I was getting a lot of comments from people who lived in the area, and they were like, yeah, this is weird stuff that happens here. Like, I grew up here, and then you'll have people that are like, I grew up there my whole life and never saw one thing. Like, there's always going to be those people, right? But like, what's funny too is like, some people will be from East Hampton and they're saying that, and then like, Montauk is where the poor people lived. East Hampton is where like the rich people are, right? Nobody's going to touch East Hampton. You're not going to see anything over there, But Montauk, like, and I'm not saying everyone's poor over there. It's just more like middle class and now it's really nice, but back in the day. So yeah, I think that, what the idea that these dimensions could have merged due to the hubris of scientists is really bizarre. The technology that they created is beyond, I mean, again, it's like beyond our understanding, because if all of this stuff is true, which we've basically determined, I mean, there could be some issues with Preston's story because he was heavily MK Ultra'd, right? Some of his memories could have been false. Like, some of the details in his book could have been false, but we're talking about the major parts of his book and the narrative actually being true. It's fantastic. It's crazy.
I think that's what you do too. If you were using people in that way, and you could affect people and people's memories, you would insert ridiculous stuff into the story, so that if they did come out and talk about stuff, no one would listen to them. But you're right, like that core thing of when you talk about stories and things you hear, where you go, was something here. The
Yeah.
core of it, that there was psychic experiments, like using children, like that involve brainwaves and that involve like manipulation of time and space. That core, I think, has some feeling to it. There's something there. I'm amazed. Like I said to you in the Twitter DM when I was messaging you back, and I pulled up just quickly here the notes I had from the last show we did. This was something that like Professor Simon Holland, that's been on our show, has brought up. For the obviously you know about the Rendlesham Forest, like UFO.
Yeah. Yes.
So
I'm actually curious to hear what you guys think about that.
Well, I mean, I'd have always said,
didn't we?
Yeah, I'd have always said that it was something, some lights, whatever the lights are, something happened. I believe all that. But due to this guy, which has come out to Holland, I believe him because he's involved with some really serious people in both academia and media. He's ex-BBC.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah. And so it turns out that on the where's the stuff I've got here? So just by the like the Air Force Base, they as we speak now, supposedly he's been told they're decommissioning an underground laboratory that was there on the same. This is where the comparisons are for me, and because I think even the like the Montauk thing for him is probably like to where how far we would go with it is probably a step too far for him. But when you hear that they had a radar facility there called Cobra Mist, they built it was either the Britain's or the world's largest power station for an individual thing at the time, called the Sizewell nuclear infrastructure to power it. I think when you look at the idea that there was a secret underground military base there, that it was involving like radar technology as well. And now we can go, oh, hang on a second. Maybe the Rendlesham Forest like UFO wasn't like visiting. It didn't fly down from somewhere. It was fucking materialized into existence in the same way that the Montauk monster was. There's parallels there that I think now that this has come forward can really be picked away at.
Now, when did that happen? That happened in the 40s?
1980.
Yeah.
Oh, that happened in 80.
Yeah, 1980 December.
But wait, why were the Americans there?
But sure.
So I was listening to what's his name? Professor
Holland.
Simon Holland. Yeah. I was listening to him kind of I was trying to familiarize myself again with the incident. And he was saying that there were one of the debunk theories is that I thought was interesting is that Americans were on the base there at that time, that they were using those strips on that base for battling during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where I got confused, and I might not have been listening very carefully because I was like probably at the gym or something and not paying enough attention. But basically that it was like a fake thing that they set up to screw with the Americans' heads because they didn't like the Americans. Basically were calling the Brits in their own country aliens, as in like, you know, over in the US we call people that don't belong here illegal aliens.
Yeah.
And you guys don't have that term as strongly over there, he was saying.
Oh, we have it pretty strongly at the minute.
At the minute you do, yes. I wasn't going to get into current events or anything. No, understood there. But yeah, I think it was interesting that the theory to debunk it was that the British soldiers were basically screwing with lights or whatever in the trees with the Americans' heads. Yeah, and before I say more, I would kind of like to hear, what do you think? I mean, is this thing real? Is it not? Is it because the way that he and he's more of a on the science side, so I can't blame him. But he's more coming from the standpoint of, let's debunk this. How do we debunk this? And some of the theories are ridiculous. Like, oh, well, there's a lighthouse that's a mile away, and it's the light from the lighthouse. Like, come on, like these people aren't smart enough to know the difference between the lighthouse and actual lights in the trees.
It's also the fact that they'll have been patrolling this area multiple times,
right,
to make sure there's nobody trying to get into the base. They'll be well aware of like points of light that are around the place, so they're not following ghosts, essentially trying to
they touched it.
The idea that it was just like squaddies messing around with like US soldiers. Can you imagine the fucking issues you would have if you did this to the point where they sent like armed response into the forest?
Yeah,
that could have led to the danger to the death of soldiers. Could have led to because the actual Rendlesham Forest area, you can go into Rendlesham Forest. It's not part of the base. Could have led to the deaths of civilians.
It could have started like a war.
Yeah, imagine that. The U.S. serviceman shoots civilian while looking for UFO. That's not ideal.
No, not at all.
Well, hang about. I think we may have trod on something here. So, if that's what's going on, and these bases can basically make things appear like the Demogorgon, the Rendlesham Forest triangular craft. Because I always struggled with, why does something coming from a different planet or a galaxy far, far away comes all this distance to crash into a telegraph pole or whatever, or a World War II plane can take it down? What if the Roswell one, the base near Roswell, was also messing around with this same sort of technology? And the reason why it crashed is because it came through from nowhere and just smashed straight into the earth.
Yeah. I actually think that there's a whole lot of logistical reasons why a alien craft could get itself into trouble. And a lot of that has to do. Okay, so are you familiar with the ice cube neutrino detector down in Antarctica?
Yes.
Okay, so Eric Hecker claims, while he was working down there, he was a guy with a lot more access to the different facilities in the area, because he's like the fire chief, and if there's a fire in Antarctica, you are effed, right? So he had access to a lot of stuff. Was talking to a lot of different people. Saw a lot of things down there that he couldn't explain, and a couple of the things that were really weird was that, when he talks about it, and we've interviewed him before, and neutrinos are really fascinating because they can move through spaces that other particles cannot move through, and they allegedly travel faster than light. So what this whole base that's down there, and then he ended up seeing this like green laser that they were shooting into the sky at some point. What if, they've already figured out faster than light communication using neutrinos, and the reason why they have the neutrino detector down there is because the particles that these craft give off are a much finer particle, and that to detect them, you actually need a neutrino detector to actually see what's going on with the more microscopic energy, right? So they've reverse engineered already. I would guess what's going on in Britain in that area is more likely, probably less likely to be crazy Montauk stuff, and more likely to be them reverse engineering technology from some of these craft. But usually they're doing a bunch of crap with all of them. So it could be all of it at once. They could be doing all of it. It could be Area 51, and they're experimenting with several other things all at once. But I do think at this point we do have the technology knock these things out of the sky if we need to in different ways, because they've been studying the particles that actually affect them after reverse engineering a lot of the technology over the last 100 years. One of the scariest things I saw recently was it was Dan Farah on Joe Rogan, when the guy who just produced the documentary. What was that documentary's name again?
Age of Disclosure.
Age of Disclosure, yeah. Which, I mean, it's a softball start for anyone looking into this stuff. And not to criticize him, I think that you kind of have to do that if you're coming out with a documentary and you want to like move the needle forward a little bit, right? I think he did a good job. But the interview with him on Joe Rogan was much more interesting because he was talking about all the stuff he couldn't put in the documentary.
Didn't he say it was supposed to be about 4 hours long or something? If you'd have kept everything.
Yeah, right. But he was saying some really really interesting things about alien craft and like some of the technology that they actually have. And one of the scariest things that I remember him saying was about how what they're really concerned about now is how much does China and Russia know, because they know that China is reverse engineering these craft as well. And it's only a matter of time before they have technology that could affect the United States, right? Apparently, now everybody knows that the US, I mean, if you have half a brain, you know that the US has been reverse engineering this technology longer than anywhere else. We don't even know. We have not even an idea, especially if you take into consideration that the technology during the 1980s for the Montauk Project was that advanced. We have no idea what they have right now, how deep into space they are, the crazy kinds of stuff that they're doing. No idea, right? The fact that the military-industrial complex, which is run by who knows, and it's controlled by no one, President of the United States doesn't have control over it. They're doing whatever they're doing on their own, which is a total bizarre conversation to have, right? If China was to reverse engineer some of this stuff and they were actually to use some of that technology to start attacking the United States, the absolute last thing that they would do is to bring out the technology that they had to defend against them. Because if you do that, you're basically you're showing your cards. And the last thing that they want to do is show all of the technology that they've actually developed. So what makes it scary is that China's at this place where they just started doing it and they're crazy because they're communists, so they might do something. But the United States is so far advanced, but they won't actually use that technology in a way that would show or reveal and become a threat to national security. So we could have hundreds of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people dying because of their resistance and actually allowing this technology to come out and defend if anything happened, right? Because if China attacks someone, well, first thing they're going to do is try to take over Taiwan. But they would want, like, everything that they've been doing is unrestricted warfare with the United States. TikTok is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
You can say anything you want about the United States. You can reveal anything you want about the United States. You can talk as much crap about the United States as you want. The moment you mention something bad about China, your account is down on TikTok. Yeah. And like, think about how much like nasty pornography, like all kinds of stuff is on TikTok. Like, it's all just to try to numb the citizens within the United States. And it's a whole massive psychological operation, but the type of warfare China is using against the United States is not normal at all.
I think it goes beyond the US as well. I think it's essentially the West.
100%.
And because I've always had this before I thought about it being like a foreign like nation and stuff like that. It was when you look at the social changes that have happened in such a short space of time. Yeah. And it's the like quite literally from being a the West being a reasonably together like group of countries, to having just inside each country this breakdown of like self hatred, like self national hatred, the breakdown in like relationship between the sexes, between races, between fucking genders. None of this is by accident, and it's led us to this point here, to where we are the weakest we've ever been, because we're fucking arguing with ourselves. Like
I know, it's crazy.
What's going on in Venezuela is a perfect example of that. I know we said before about politics, conspiracy theories turn into politics, but you had at one point 6 hours, I think, was the first protests against what happened.
Yeah.
So there was people protesting it while there was celebrations going on in the country. It makes fucking zero sense if you're actually an activist that cares about anyone.
Yeah, it's true. Of course, like how would you be unintelligent enough to not listen to the actual people suffering in Venezuela, thanking, President Trump or whatever, and still think that, hey, this is a bad move? Like the simple answer is those people would just protest anything he does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, period. They can't look at things without the kind of contempt that they have for him. Like, I'm not talking about whether I like President Trump or not or anything like that here. I'm just talking about, like, anytime anything happens, you can't just like be against someone because it's them. You have to look at the action itself, right? Like, imagine if we did that to one another,
Yeah, you can take the people out, and what it is it is the result of a probably decade-long psychological operation. So around that.
Yeah. And so if you look at what was his name? Do I have his book back here? There were some guys who trained Hillary Clinton and Obama in community organizing. I'll try to hunt down his name after, but I can't think of it right now. Anyway, in his book, he even says about how when you are creating an argument, all of the demons are one side and all of the angels are on the other, and you don't suggest any solutions. So the socialist guidebook for how to create revolutions, essentially, is that you find a subject that everyone agrees on is bad. This thing is bad. Racism is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look at what's going on, Trump is not a racist. Like, that guy has given more money to black communities than any other president in the history of ever. Like, black folks that have come into contact with him, he's literally helped them build their businesses. Like, you brought up WWE earlier. Bobby Lashley, who is a big WWE wrestler, loves President Trump, because when Trump was involved with the WWE, he used to support Bobby Lashley all the time. It was like his favorite wrestler. Right? Obviously not a racist. But how do you get all of these people who just think with emotion and they don't use their brains to go against a guy like that? Well, it's pretty easy. You highlight the fact that he's talking about nationalistic things, and you relate that to Hitler and call him a Nazi, and then you call him a racist, because if he's a racist, everyone's going to hate him. And then all the Democrats are going to hate him, right? And then you don't ever publish any material that is going to counter that. So even if President Trump could talk your ear off on CBS or CNN or whatever about why he's not racist or what he's doing, they'll never publish that part. They'll publish the part that they want to use to attack him. So the media companies are all very much like, we don't know. Like, the dangerous part of this is that we don't know, like, how much of them is being controlled by the shareholders, and who are the shareholders. And when you go down that rabbit hole and you follow the money, you find some startling and scary things about how all of the corporations in the entire world are all being controlled by these strange venture capitalist companies, and they're all the same. And then the DEI and the ESG scores are all being rolled out by the world, the World Economic Forum, and somehow it's controlling the corporations in the West. I mean, just to say it plainly, like, what we're seeing now is that they're rolling communism out through globalism, using capitalism to do it. So they've wisened up after what happened over in the East with China and everything, and they're just rolling it out in a different way. I mean,
Disney's the perfect example.
Oh, God.
Yes. So when you've got such a powerhouse when it comes to entertainment, and they've, in such a short space of time, just destroyed their brand. To most people that would do it, they've took beloved franchises and just ruined them, and it's hemorrhaging money, just hemorrhaging.
It's hemorrhaging. I know.
Yeah, it makes no sense whatsoever. Do you think when you look at this sort of stuff, there is any light at the end of the tunnel, or is this like, this unstoppable?
No, not at all. I mean, if it was unstoppable, we'd all be dead by now.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I really believe that. I had this episode, actually, I would recommend anyone who's watching this to go check it out on Metaphysical. It's called "Did the World End in 1999?"
That's next on my list. I saw that and I thought, what's this
Check
about?
that out, because it's a weird thought exercise that shows you how bizarre everything has been since 1999, in such a way where it's almost like the fabric of the matrix that we're living is almost showing itself to us right now. Because I actually believe that if it wasn't for divine intervention, we just wouldn't be here right now. So if we're here, and yes, is it chaotic? Are we seeing the result of human beings, problems? Yes. But if we're still here, if we've got a breath in us today, there's hope, because we're still here. We shouldn't be here. And that was the whole point of this episode, was to kind of like explain and see if anyone else thought what I thought, which is just like, I mean, I was born in 1980. I don't know about you guys, but I've been around for a while now.
I'm 1980.
You are too. So, I mean, I remember what it was like in the 80s and the 90s, and how when you were in the 80s, you could look back and see how distinct the differences were between each decade. It was so obvious, like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, so different from one another. Now, after 2000, the year 2000, it's almost like you can look back into like 2006 and see what people are wearing, and they might be wearing the same thing today. Even though the technology has gotten that much more advanced, you'd think that would trickle down into pop culture, and it's all the same.
Like, I had this
so weird
exact conversation on Saturday night with my girlfriend and my son, because we sat down and we watched the first Percy Jackson film, and that film came out in like 2000.
I like that film.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah,
but it was like 2008 or something like that. I was saying to them, like, think about this, like, if I was my son's age and we went back all those years, like you say, back in what would it have been then? It would have been about 1993, for instance.
Yes.
And we went back nearly 20 years to watch a film. It would be unrecognizable to me. My son is just sat watching Percy Jackson for what might as well be a film that was made this year.
Exactly. Like, the hairstyles really weren't that much different. Like, it's so, that to me is the biggest signal that we're living in a very, very interesting time. Not to mention a lot of the other details like the Mandela effect and other things that are actually going on around us, but I really think that there is hope because people are actually waking up. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, but actually, if you look at even with the craziness that's happening in Europe right now, right? And we could even take the UK, right? Maybe there's a lot of people in the UK feeling really hopeless with what's happening, but just wait. You don't even have to do anything. I mean, of course, you do whatever you think you should do. I'm just saying, like, the way that these things are going is it's coming to this insane point where it just can't go any further. The pendulum is swinging and it's at almost its furthest point. What happens to a pendulum? Well, at some point it just starts swinging back. And that's what happened in 2024. That, like, everyone thought in 2020, that was it. We're screwed because, like, different reasons that I won't go into. Okay. But that 4 years that happened set everything up for a crazy 2025 and 2026 now, right? I really think that things are moving, like that pendulum can only swing so far. Yes, it's going to be difficult. Yes, there's going to be a lot of realizations, a lot of people waking up. And, maybe some people just are never going to change. But the majority of people who have a few brain cells are going to think their way through this and realize what's going on and be allowed to, like, get on board with the truth, spiritually too. I don't just think that this has to do with politics. I think that, not to get into this too much, but like the world's religions have a lot to do with how all of this stuff kind of like rolls out. And I think that there's been a lot of this has been long coming, I think it's very dangerous when, and I'm not mentioning any names here, but I think it's very dangerous when money gets involved into spiritual practice. Money and spiritual practice, those two things cannot mix. And every time they do, it goes wrong. I don't care how good you think your religion is. And I'm not talking about the God behind those religions or anything like that. I'm just talking about human beings have a really hard time organizing these things and staying honest with them, So I think that a lot of that is going to, like, come to a head as well. And some of it's already getting somewhat cleaned up, but I think that there's going to be a lot of eye-opening things happening over the next 50 years. It's going to be a fun ride.
I think what you're saying there, Rob, is if you need an exorcist, don't pay for it.
Actually, anyone should. Theoretically, you can exercise yourself. Just, stop vibing on the level of that demon and eject that thing.
That's not what you think he means, Ollie. But Rob, that's a proper positive note to finish the podcast on, which is
perfect.
Unusual for a conspiracy theory podcast. usually it's like, oh well, things are a bit fucked.
What are we doing? What are we doing here? Yeah. Why are we doing this? Why are we talking about it? It's to bring light to some of these things and hopefully raise people above it, right?
Yeah. Well, I hope you'll come back on the podcast again, mate.
I'd love to.
I want to talk about Mandela effect.
I know, yeah.
Well, dude,
this is the thing. There's so much to talk about, isn't there?
Dude, watch that 1999 video. So the Mandela effect makes a cameo in there, and it just it'll twist your mind up.
Tell everyone where they can find you, and if you can give us an idea when Edge of Wonder is coming back, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to have an idea of when that's coming back too. But yeah, here's everything that I know. Okay, so like I have the best way that you can support what I'm doing right now is help us grow Metaphysical on YouTube, because when we lost Edge of Wonder, we lost our fans, right? So if you can watch Metaphysical, if you enjoy our content, subscribe. You know, give us a like and also a hype. There's this new hype feature on YouTube you got to check out. That would be great. If you'd like to support in a more meaningful way, you can support rise.tv, which is, we changed edgeofwonder.tv to rise.tv so that we could avoid censorship on Google, just so you know why that happened. So rise.tv, we have over 1,000 videos on mysteries, and we have Metaphysical After Hours, which is John and I will after our shows, we'll actually have after hours where we go into way crazier, even crazier, deeper conversations a lot of times, and it'll take you for a loop. So you can support us over there. And regarding Edge of Wonder, I think getting it back is like, it's kind of like finding a treasure in the woods, right? We really want to do something with it, but then at the same time, if we're going to do it, we're really strapped right now for resources and even manpower. So if we're going to do it, we want to do it really, really well. And so right now we're just trying to take a step back and develop content. And I'm hoping that we start publishing in February or March, I would say. Yeah.
Cool. Not long to wait then.
No, not too long. We've been working on it already. We're just trying to be careful about, because once you start that engine back up, you can't stop. You know, it's like, you know, sometimes when you start publishing somewhere, you're like, do I really want to keep doing this? Because it's like, it's just a grind, right? And there's a lot of grinding going on right now. So yeah, hopefully we can get those up in February or March and start going hard on YouTube on Edge of Wonder.
Awesome, mate. Well, I'll leave the description to the YouTube channel and Rise TV in the comments and in the show notes and stuff like that for everyone that's listening to us. If you can hang back for like 2 minutes or whatever upload in the cloud thing has to do, that'd be
I got you covered. Yeah, we use StreamYard too, so I got you covered.
Awesome. Cheers, man. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much.
Welcome, mate.